Hello, Prealgebra students. This is Lesson 18, and our objective is what are different kinds of angles and lines, which this lesson is mostly review. You've seen it sometime in the past, so we're just going to kind of go through this, maybe take a little step further about naming angles and lines, but don't freak out because most of this you've seen before. So first of all, when we're talking about a line, we're talking about everything in a straight path that has no thickness, no width, and extends for forever. And we say that it extends for forever by indicating that with arrows on either end. So this is what we call a line. So it's straight, it goes forever in that direction, goes forever in that direction, and we indicate it goes forever by the arrows. Now a ray is half of one. Think about maybe taking this line and cutting it somewhere. So you start at a point and you go on forever. It's kind of like ray guns in like old space movies. It starts at the gun and goes, starts at the starting point and it shoots off forever in some direction. That's what we call ray guns. So it has a starting point and it goes forever in one direction. And then a segment is kind of like where you take a chunk of a line. So you cut off maybe both ends, and then you have what we call a segment, which is a piece of a line. And segments can be measured, right? Because you have a starting point and an end point, so you could measure a segment. Whereas lines and rays, they kind of are infinite in length, so you can't actually measure them. So to name a line, or a part of a line, you need 2 points on it. So for this one, you need any 2 points. Find 2 points on there, and you can name it. For a ray, you need to have where it starts and some other point on there. And for a segment, you have to have its 2 end points is the only proper way to name it, because you have to know where it starts and where it ends. Most of the time, we just name that by points in the line, and points are indicated by capital letters. So here's a line I've drawn here, has points A, B, C, and D on there. And so here's some different ways we can draw that. We could say this line is AB. AB. So I'm using these 2 points on the line. And notice I draw the little line over the top of it, indicating it is a line. Now AB is the same thing actually as BA, right? Be the same thing. I could have also named it with BD, or DC, or AC, or DC. As long as I put that little line with the arrows on either end. It's a proper way. This is proper notation for naming a line. You use 2 points that are on that line, and we use capital letters to represent those points. Okay? Now, when we're talking about a ray, you have to include its starting point, and we always start with that. So you always start with, in this case, this ray, A, B, C, D. We start with A, and you name any other point on that line. So we could name that AB, AC, or AD. Those are the 3 different ways you can name this ray. Remember, you always start with A, and then you do an arrow drawing to the right. So it starts at A and goes through B, or it starts at A and goes through D, starts at A and goes through C. These are all 3 the same ray right there. Now, if you have a segment, then you have different points on there, A, B, C, and D. The only proper way to name a segment is to say AD, using its 2 endpoints. Now, I guess we could say this is the same thing as DA, right? So you could switch the order of that and it would still be the same. That's true for segments and lines, but rays, the order does matter. You have to start with this end point and go through another point. So those are the only 2 ways you could name a segment. Alright, a plane. Don't think about like an airplane that you fly in from one place to another. And a plane, when we're talking about in a geometric space, is a flat surface with no thickness that it just extends forever. So think about a piece of paper that has no thickness that extends forever in all the directions that its edge is just a flat like piece of metal that goes forever in every direction. A plane has no edge, but when we draw one, we have to draw it with edges because otherwise wouldn't be able to see it. So we just kind of draw it with edges. I normally draw it kind of in the shape of a parallelogram, kind of like this. And we name them with 3 points that's on there. So any 3 points will define a plane, a specific plane. So we would say like plane ABC if A, B, and C were on that plane. Okay? I'm not talking about like letters on a plane, like snakes on a plane or something, but points that are on that flat surface. Okay? Now let's talk about pairs of lines. Pairs of lines. The first one that you've probably heard of before are parallel lines. Now parallel lines have to be in the same plane, so on the same flat surface, and they never cross. They never cross. It doesn't matter how far out this way you go towards infinity. And this one, they will never cross at some point. Okay? So we call those parallel, if they're in the same plane and they never cross. Now, if we think about, next one is perpendicular, means that they are in the same plane and they meet at a right angle. So they meet at 90 degrees. They meet at 90 degrees. So two lines, they do intersect and they meet at 90 degrees. And it's actually not part of this lesson, but if you have two lines that meet that not at a right angle, we call these oblique. Call them oblique lines that are in the same plane and cross at some other angle besides 90. But again, it's not really on your test. The next thing are what we call skew lines. Now these lines are in different planes, so they cannot be on the same flat surface, and they do not touch. So it's kind of similar to parallel, because parallel are lines that don't touch. But notice these ones are in different planes. So kind of think of this black figure as a cube. If I drew that line and this line, they would never touch, but they're not on the same flat surface. This would be going up and down, this would be going forwards and backwards, but they never touch. We call that skew. Alright, now let's talk about angles. Two rays with the same endpoint, or what we call an angle. So two rays with the same endpoint. So here's a ray, and they have the same endpoint right there. So this is an angle. Now we classify them by the measure of their angles. We say they're acute if they're between 0 and 90 degrees. We say they're right if they measure exactly 90 degrees, and we put a little box in the corner to indicate that. We say they're obtuse if they're between 90 and 180. And we say they're straight if it just measures exactly 180, so it forms something like this. So you can kind of think of like acute as like, oh, it's such a cute little baby, acute, it's small, right? Small angles. I actually had a onesie made for my son that said that. Right angle, again, the box in the corner. And if you're cold, just go stand in the corner because it's 90 degrees. And then obtuse, if you want to think of obtuse as like obese, as that same prefix, ob. So obtuse is large, bigger than 90, like 100, 91, 178, etc., etc. And then straight measures exactly 80 degrees, so it looks like a straight line. Okay. Now something else we need to do. Your homework, I don't know if you noticed it already, is it starts on page 117. You're doing all of the practice set, all of 18, all from 17, and then 6 more of your choice. Good luck, guys. It's talking about naming an angle. So let's just draw an angle here. To name an angle, we put a little angle symbol on this, little like that, and then we have to name a point on a side, the vertex, and then a point on the other side. So to name this angle right here, we would say angle ABC. Notice this is a point on that side, the vertex, and then the other side. So you read this angle ABC. That's how you name it. Now, let's name this one over here. I have to say angle Y, X, Z. Now, I could have just as easily said angle Z, X, Y, right? A side, a vertex, and then a side. So these two are the same. But I could not have said angle X, Y, Z, because I have to say a side, the vertex, and a side. Okay. Likewise, with this first one in red, I could have said CBA if I wanted to angle CBA. Now, sometimes, as mathematicians, we like to write less. We'd rather write less than more. So we could sometimes name these just by naming one of them at the vertex. We could say angle B or angle X. And that would still be talking about that same angle as YXZ or ABC. Okay. However, if we have more than one angle at a point, then we can't do that. So look at this example down here. Notice there's actually 4 angles, right? This red angle, this blue angle, this black angle, and this green angle. There's 4 angles. So if I were to say angle P, which one would you be talking about? Maybe you'd assume the green one since I drew in green. But there's actually 4 different angles with the vertex of P. So I couldn't actually do that. Right? I wouldn't be able to do that if there's more than one angle there. So if I want to talk about this red angle, I would say angle LPM. If I want to talk about the blue angle, I would say angle OPN. The black angle would be MPN. So notice all of those have that P there in the middle because the vertex is at point P. Okay?